All right, so I want to dig deep into how we generate leads from every podcast interview that we are a guest on. I know that we've done some overarching, here's some really quick tips, some quick little things, but today I really want to dive into because this is such an important piece of the strategy and I don't want you to overlook it. We don't want to waste these podcast interviews. Now, I also want to go on record. If you've done a podcast interview and you've done a bunch and you didn't leverage all of the strategies that I'm going to teach you today, we're not going to sweat it, right? We're just going to move forward from here on, day forward, right? Those were practiced. Everything happens in a time and a season and a reason. So we're just going to move forward. We're not going to beat ourselves up because of something we may or may not have done in the past to generate leads from all of these podcast interviews. But I will tell you, it is the number one concern that I see inside of our Facebook community when people reach out. They're like, I've been a guest on all of these shows, and it hasn't grown my business. Even when I was speaking at business expos, I would have people come up to me all the time and say, yeah, I got media exposure. I was on TV. I was in the news. Right, we had all of this and my business didn't grow. Marketing, right? It's a two-way street. First, we're creating exposure and traffic, but really it's up to us to convert. So this is really our conversion lesson here and our strategy of how we can convert. Because getting booked on shows, as you've seen with the Media Firestorm strategy, it's like fishing in a barrel, right? Podcast hosts come to us. Here, I'm looking for a guest that speaks on this, and we just respond and we can get booked. So going out and getting booked, we've solved that problem. But now it's how we leverage those podcast interviews as a guest, and really the onus is on us. But I want to give you actually some stats about how and why podcast guesting is one of the most effective organic lead generation tools. So this isn't paid advertising. Paid advertising is incredibly effective when you've got that dialed in. But when it comes to organically growing your business, your brand, converting leads, attracting leads, podcast guesting is the number one marketing tool, the most effective organic lead generation tools. And here's why. 80% of podcast listeners listen to all or almost all, like majority of the episode. So that's 20 to 30, even up to 60 minutes of them listening to you, connecting with you, being entertained, educated, right? Getting value from you. Unlike social posts or ads, right? Where they're just like skimming through. This is long form content where they're listening in their earbuds, right? They're probably actively doing something else at the same time, right? They're commuting, they're working out, they're walking the dog, they're doing something else. And so their brain is actively engaged while their body is physically engaged in another activity. Their brain is hyper engaged in listening to this. So they're highly engaged. They're spending 30 to 60 minutes with you, and that level of attention builds deep trust and it allows you to share your story, your expertise, and a call to action, right, in a way that absolutely converts, right? It's how we talk about it, how we position ourselves. I'm going to go deep into that. But secondly, podcast audiences are 3 times more likely to follow a call to action from the host, right? So listeners have a strong social connection with those hosts. They already follow them, they already listen to them, they already trust. That trust automatically transfers over to you by being introduced as the guest. So when you appear as a guest, you benefit instantly from the trust that they built. That was a weak snap, right? Instantly, right? This borrowed trust means that your offer feels more like a warm referral, right? And how do we know? Like, how many times have we said my business has grown by referrals? So you're being referred to, you're being endorsed by these hosts, and the audience feels that. And because they like the host, they like you, and then your offer is more trusted. Third, 62% of podcast listeners have made a purchase money, right? After hearing about a podcast or a service on a podcast. So the podcasts convert, period. Right? It's like listening to commercials, like an infomercial. They absolutely convert. Listeners are actively looking for solutions, right? They came for the content, they came for the topic, but they stayed for you, right? And they're actively looking for solutions and they are willing to take action. So that means that guesting lets you present your solution directly to an audience who is already tuned in, right? This is your ideal audience and without paid ads. Even if you're paying something, right? You're paying an admin fee, a little marketing fee to the host, right? It's very different than paying per clicks and paying for ads. It's not, this isn't thousands of dollars, right, to generate attraction. It's really you building that know, like, and trust factor, sharing your story, right? People don't like to be told to buy something, but they like to be told stories. And so it gives you an opportunity to share your story. So here's the framework for what we need really to establish ourselves to make sure that we're generating leads from our podcast interviews. Number one, you need a single podcast lead magnet. It needs to have its own opt-in or URL. So for example, I mean, we've seen some really crazy mistakes, right, happen inside, from previous clients, where they've got really odd spelling words, their name, maybe it's your name. I mean, if I was to say go to angeltussy.com, nobody in the world knows how to spell Tussy. And they most of the time they may even misspell angel, right? And so if I've got angeltussy.com as my lead magnet telling you to go to this opt-in page and they don't know how to spell it, I'm going to miss out on the lead. So number one, poor spelling, difficult to spell. If you've got I could say it, right? Angel, Angeltuccy, right? I could spell it for them, but then I'm also consuming up like extra time. If you're in radio, this is probably fine for podcasting, but in radio, you don't have the luxury of those extra minutes. And, my background is radio and broadcasting, so I think like that. But you do have the extra time here in podcasting, so it's not as much of an issue. But if you feel rushed and if you rush through spelling it and somebody misses it, so now we use needaguest.com. And I emphasize, right? I don't say needaguest.com, right? I don't like rush through it. You go to needaguest.com, like emphasize need a get, like you have to think like they're listening. You don't want them to miss it. It's kind of like when we share our phone numbers, right? 720, they're like, wait a minute, what was that? You've got to go slow. You've got to be able to enunciate it. And it has to be something really easy for people to spell and to remember and to type out. So the less characters, the better, right? And so we need a single podcast lead magnet. It's its own opt-in, right? Leads only to an opt-in page, not to our website, not to our social sites, not to our link tree, right? Only to the opt-in where they give me their phone number or their email address, right? They are opting in to get this data, right? To get this free gift. And we're going to talk about the free gift. But very first thing is the URL. Where are we sending people to? You want to go and purchase a simple URL. It can point to your Go High Level. It can point to an Eventbrite. It can point to a Jot form. It can point to a website. I don't care where it points to. I mean, I do care, but the goal of it is to have a simple URL that goes back to your opt-in page. Secondly, right, we need to have it all be matchy-matchy throughout the interview. Right? So if I'm saying you need to be a guest, and then I'm talking about needing guests and need a guest and need a guest, or if I'm talking about media firestorm, and when you are a guest, right, on 50 podcasts, you create a firestorm of exposure and a firestorm, like it's all got to be matchy-matchy, and you have to be able to share it throughout the interview. Do not wait until the end. This is the other thing I hear people say, like the host never asked me. We ran out of time for me to share it at the end, right? Or we rushed through it and it got cut off, or they didn't share it in the show notes, right? Like we cannot put the responsibility completely on the podcast host. We have to take ownership of it. And so often, and this is why your first 10 to 20 podcast interviews, we say our practice, because you're going to get better at this rolling off your tongue. You're going to get better at sharing it, weaving it into your stories and weaving it throughout your podcast interviews. And you're not, because right now it's awkward, right? Where do I put it in? I'm waiting for the host. And you're just going to get that confidence and that comfort of being able to integrate it throughout your interview. So you're going to share it at least 3 times throughout the interview. In your introduction, you're going to weave it into a story. And you're going to have it as that call to action and in your closing remarks. So it could even be four times that it's entered and shared throughout the podcast interview. And then third, we need to make sure that we're tracking the results from every single interview. This is why having a tracking sheet is critical, right? We're using our tracking sheet to keep track of the shows we applied to, right? And then when we record them, but we also want to include that link at the very end of the actual episode. So we can repurpose it, we can reshare it, we can become a marketing partner for that podcast host, we can use it for social content and posting content. And also to track, right? That once they drop, that we're seeing leads come out right away. That it's reminding us to go through our lead magnet and test out the web page, make sure that everything is working. So your first 10 to 20, again, our practice so that we can just get really good at this, really comfortable with sharing it. So the purpose, right, of a lead magnet and not just sending them to a website or a social media page is moving them from just hearing about you to coming into your castle, right? Like think about your business is a castle and the castle oversees the entire kingdom. Like this is the impact that you have everywhere you go, every podcast interview, right? That you're in a brand new kingdom. And around your castle is a moat, right? There's a big deep moat and the only way into your castle is through the drawbridge. Right. So we want to make sure that we go take this audience from just hearing about you to bringing them into your castle through this opt-in. So there's one single bridge, and that is your opt-in. They come into your castle. Once they're there, of course you can send them your social sites. Of course you can share your website with them. Of course you can share all this other good stuff with them. But we need a single call to action that gets them into our castle. And that single call to action has to be exciting. It has to be valuable. It can't just be an ebook or, here's a white paper. Like, what's the result? If you've ever been to a sporting event, right, they are launching t-shirts out of a cannon and people are climbing over seats, right? They're climbing over humans, right, to get this t-shirt, something they'll probably doesn't fit and they'll never wear. Like, but they want it. Will people climb over seats? Are they clamoring to get this? Is this the thing? And the more valuable your lead magnet is, the easier it will be for people to take advantage of it, right? The more likely they're going to want to grab it. We now use our Facebook community currently as our lead magnet, as our opt-in. We've tested Google Docs, we've tested pop-up podcast series, like we've tested different things. Here's I used to give a PDF of headlines, right? An annual list of media headlines, like, and so we've tested different things. What's working for us right now is that the recording of this is sending them to our Facebook community where when they opt in, we collect their email address. So as long as you're sending them to a single opt-in and it's giving them the thing that they want, something that's valuable to them. So what is the result? What would they clamor over? How can we make it more exciting? How can we make it more valuable? The more value you add on the front end, the more opt-ins you're going to get. Just plain and simple, right? So we want to move them into your castle. And I want you also to think about this. Like what is a good lead magnet? What's something that gets them into your castle? And this isn't necessarily a podcast interview sample, but it's a really cool story. Gillette razors, if you're familiar with Gillette razors, they did a whole marketing campaign where they physically mailed to homeowners because they figured homeowners had money, right? They had their demographics and different zip codes, right? They physically mailed free Gillette razor handles out to thousands of homes, thousands of homes. My dad actually worked at the post office at the time, right? And they had buckets and buckets and buckets of these handles that they were mailing out and delivering to these homes. So here was something brilliant. They gave you the handle for free. And what did you need to go and purchase? The blades, right? The blades were you had to replace the blades, right? So you had to replace them every so often. The handle, right? You had the free handle. Now I've got to replace the blades. I'm going to go buy blades. I need to replace the blades. And so if you think about a lead magnet, like what can you give them that's the handle right, for free, but then they're going to keep continuing to come to you for the recurring added value that they need. So I love the Gillette example because here's something that was valuable, but they put it in front of their target audience. And so I want your something valuable to be digital, something that you don't actually ever have to touch. It's delivered automatically. So it could be videos, it could be checklists, it could be recipes, it could be coupons, simple downloads, quizzes, tools, short guides, access to a community, but making sure that it is actually something incredibly valuable that your audience, right? So when it comes to speaking and being a guest on podcasts, I want you to share your story with everyone. I want you to speak on as many podcasts as possible. And I'm not so much concerned about their download numbers as making sure it's the right conversation because every host has an audience, not only their podcast audience, their social media following, their email list, their client base, their marketing partners. Right? Just building relationships with these podcast hosts is incredibly valuable for us. If I only build relationships with these 50 hosts, I win. But I want to make sure that I'm actually being a marketing partner and creating this ongoing visibility every single week. It's the volume that matters, right? It's the volume and the consistently getting booked on two podcasts every week that is critical for us. So make sure that your podcast, right, is valuable and it's exactly what your audience is looking for. Make sure that it solves a specific problem that you can talk about in your podcast interview, right? So as you're sharing your story, I love this phrase. This is why. This is why I created this razor blade handle, right? And I want to give one to all of my audience today, right? This recipe, this quick list, this short guide, this shortcut that's gonna shortcut your journey. I know because I've been there, right? I've walked in your shoes and I this is the tool I wish I had, right? So if you've got a something that's giving them the result that you can share as was part of your journey that you wish it was something you had or this is why you created it. I love the phrase, this is why. So making sure that you've got like something quick and easy. We do actually have a great training video on how to create a giveaway and a free training using JotForm. And so we've got a create training video in our podcast module, in phase one podcast module for you to grab. If you're looking up how do I create a quick and easy landing page, by the URL that goes and points to it and how to create that. And you can do that in just minutes. Here's how you integrate your lead magnet, your opt-in, right, into your interview, because this is critical as well, right? How do I integrate it? How do I talk about it? When do I share it? How do I share it? So at the very beginning, like there's actually four places, yep, four places that we have the opportunity to talk about our gift, to talk about our opt-in, to talk about our lead magnet. And you don't call it a lead magnet, right? You talk about it as a gift. My join my Facebook community, right? Because right now today I have a dozen podcasters who are looking for guests, right? So you're going to talk about it as the result. Grab this handle, grab my recipes, download this resource, right? What is the result that they're going to give? Lose 5 pounds in 5 days. I've got the secret strategy, right? Go and grab this video where I walk you through it. So you're not going to call it a lead magnet. You're not going to call it an opt-in or a newsletter. You're going to call it the result that it is, the gift, because it's got to be valuable, right? And giving away, right, the three-part audio series, right? We have all of the, we have the free podcast app, access to the group, like you're telling them what it is. So at the very beginning, when you introduce yourself and you're like, hey, right? They're like, hey, Angel, thanks for being on my show today. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to your audience about how they can start getting booked on podcasts every single week. In fact, we have a free resource that we're going to give to every single one of your listeners today. Like I can integrate it into my hello right at the very beginning. I'm not giving it away, but I'm talking about the gift right away. So, number one, introduce that you've got something that you're going to offer to them. And just mention, right? We're going to give everybody this free razor blade today, right? Like you're talking about what it is. And then in your stories, right? Again, I said that this is why, right? And just at least once through one of your answers. If anybody asks you, how do people find you? They're not asking you, well, okay, so here was an answer. Oh, well, sometimes they find me on social. Sometimes people refer them to me. That's not what they're asking. How do people find you? Go to needaguest.com and get into my castle, right? Come and play with me. You can send me a DM from there. You also get access to, right, when I'm on stage, I'll say, right, if you text this keyword, not only am I going to give you access to our how to get booked in 10 days, 10 podcasts in the next 30 days, I'm going to give you access to get a copy of my book, give you access to our free community. Like I'm playing it up. That's what they're asking you. So somewhere in your story, you want to make sure that you've got this freebie that you're offering, this gift, and you're using it and weaving it into one of your answers. So that's two, right? In the very beginning, when I'm telling you I'm here, I've got something great for you. In one of my answers, I'm telling you we've created this great community that you can plug into, and I'm going to give you all free access today. Number three, when they ask you, how do we get in touch with you? What's the best way for our audience to follow up with you or get access or claim? Throughout the whole thing, they're only getting one answer from me, and that is my opt-in URL, needaguest.com. I never offer them anything different. So at the end, yep, you can get in touch with me. You can reach out to me. Like any question that they ask about my castle, one URL. I don't send them to my website. If my name is on Zoom, right, and I've got my name on a Zoom thing, mine says Angel Tussey, needaguest.com. It all has to be matchy-matchy. If I'm telling you go to Media Firestorm or Media Firestorm is in my name and this one's Need a Guest and then that one's Media Firestorm and this one's Angel Tussey, like if there's all these different options, you're going to confuse the audience. Hands down, you're just going to confuse the audience. And then the final place. Okay, this is so important how you kind of sandwich this all together. They almost always ask you for a closing remark. Hey, do you have any closing remarks? Do you have any last words? Do you have final thoughts that you want to share with the audience? Absolutely, I do. And it's going to tie right back into my free gift. I know that right now there are hundreds, thousands of opportunities for podcasters who are seeking guests. Somebody right now is searching for your story. You need to share it. Your next podcast interview could be the ripple effect that impacts the world at a great level. Make sure you go and plug yourself into needaguest.com and get started today. Like my closing remark isn't somebody else's quote, it's mine, right? It's my message, it's my call to action, it's my gift to the audience, right? They might not remember what you started with, but they will definitely remember how you ended, how you closed it out. I even tell this to my speakers. Um, you might have a slow start, right? In getting the audience to listen and breaking the ice, but it's how you close that is where the profit is, right? It's how you close is where the profit is. It's where the lead gen is totally happen. So here's how you make it natural. Tell a quick story, right? That's tied to your lead magnet. Yeah, I love the phrase, this is why. You can also, teach something and then tease it, right? Where you give out the value, and then the lead magnet is where they take the next step, right? I have the quiz, I have the recipe, I have the 10 steps already written down for you. You can print them out and put them on your refrigerator, right? So you teach it and then you offer it, right? In the lead magnet. So make sure that you practice, right? That's why the first 10 to 20 podcast interviews are practice. You're going to practice this like on the go. I say the path is paved by walking on it. We can sit in front of the mirror, we can try it out. It, but it's when you're actually in the do, right, that it actually starts to come out and you're going to get more comfortable with it. You just totally are. It's going to, I mean, imagine 50 podcasts from now, you're always ready. You've got this dialed in. You can answer any question. You've always tying it back to your opt-in. You're going to it's going to come, it's going to flow. It's going to be so natural. It's going to be amazing. It's just going to be amazing. So number one, right, we want to make sure that we've got that clean URL, the one opt-in. We've got something really good, right? We're going to integrate it in throughout our entire interview. And then finally, we're going to make sure that we are tracking and converting those leads after the interview. Test out your lead magnet. Go to that webpage. What happens? Is there lots of other stuff going on? We want a single call to action and a place they can put their email address. That's it. Super clean, super simple. Result, enter here, right? Free gift, right by adding in. And you guys can do if you just do a Google search, right, on lead magnet opt-in page samples, right? You'll see just quick and easy some really simple things that you can do to create. Make sure that you're tagging the podcast host, that you're a friend of the podcast host, so you guys are cross promoting each other and going back and forth because you there's a ripple effect of engagement and visibility that you each bring to each bring to the mix, and so it's more dynamic. You're commenting, they're commenting, you're both sharing. And then just make sure that you are like every time, every month, you're just tracking those downloads and you're going back in and seeing how many people clicked, how many people are there, and it's growing. And when I think about over 2 years, we were a guest on about 200 podcasts. We grew our community from 10,000 to 40,000 in those 2 years. I think we added, what is that, 30,000 people who came into the group, probably added about 20,000 into our email list. That's 10,000 over the year. That's probably about, I don't know, 50 to 100 new leads every single week just by being a guest on podcasts. So it's the long play, right? It's not one that I'm counting on. It's the overarching, the whole program, the whole system, the whole strategy that is building that momentum and that consistency. So just make sure that you've got really one good option, that you're matchy-matchy throughout your entire process, that everything, your language, your URLs, what you put on screen, what you mention, that everything, right, it all matches, right? And so when we start thinking about podcasting, it's no longer just about exposure, it's about conversion. And if our podcast interviews aren't converting, go back and watch your episodes. Watch your interviews. After watching this and having this little checklist of things that you're doing, you're going to see. You're going to see, oh, here's where I could have added it. Here's how I could have matched that. Here's what, and just do better next time, right? Like every day, we just do better. Once you know better, you do better. And that's it. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep tracking and tweaking. Because podcast interviews, again, the number one organic way, traffic source to generate leads. And every podcast interview is an opportunity to generate new leads. So I know that was deep. I know we covered a lot. Watch this again, take notes, and with every new podcast interview, make yourself a checklist. Did I do these three things? Right? Did I have a single podcast interview or URL that I sent everybody to? Did I matchy-matchy and share it multiple times throughout the interview? And then did I test and track the results from every podcast that I was on? So, cheers.